When I heard the Panasonic GH5 had autofocusing issues, this is what I was thinking. What is good, YouTube? It's that one camera guy back at it again with another video. In this episode, I'm going to do a short excerpt from the Monday live show that Jason Vong and I do on our Monday podcast. By the way, we alternate between our channels who's going to host that show. We talked about the Panasonic GH5 autofocusing issue on our last show on Monday of April 10th. And now hold on till after I replay that short bit on this video, because I'm going to add some stuff at the end of this video sharing with you my updated thoughts on the Panasonic GH5 as a Sony shooter, so you don't want to miss that. Fireball of today, or the big elephant in the room, and that is
start some fight.
The GH5 autofocus issue. I know we are a Sony sort of related podcast here, but we do want to talk about it because I remember all the GH5 people were hating on the Sony people, saying how the GH5 was so great, which it is, but now they're having some auto-focusing issues. And look at here, and they're making comparisons to Sony and Canon and how good their continuous autofocus is.
Woo!
Jason, can you break the ice here and tell us a little bit about what in the world is going on with this situation?
I don't know. There apparently is a lot of drama happening on the YouTube world and the Facebook world in regards to the GH5 autofocus. I think a lot of people are saying when the GH5 was being announced, all the demos and all that good stuff, they're touting the autofocus works extremely, extremely well. I personally saw it firsthand in Japan at CP Plus that the autofocus works pretty darn well. I mean, like they had a diorama train running around and it kept focus really well. And finally, when the actual cameras hit store shelf and at people's doors, people are saying the autofocus just doesn't work that well. And I was actually pretty surprised, and I can't believe I didn't know about this before, that the GH5 uses contrast detection for focusing. If you guys don't know, the A7S II also uses contrast detection. Therefore, the autofocus just didn't work as well as the A7R2 and the A6500 did. So, yeah, it's it's kind of disappointing.
You know, like I've said, and even in the video that I did, there's a lot of compelling reasons to get a GH5. The video formats, the bit rate, all of that features. The 4K 60p is just looks really nice.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really hard to go back to. I know when I had a GH4, I never used the continuous autofocus. I was just manually pulling focus on the GH4 because I was adapting lenses.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the whole autofocus thing is really not that, blown out for what it's to be. I mean, most people are going to probably be using it pulling focus, but it does suck for a lot of the people who are one-man teams. Basically, they only got one person. They put the camera in front of them. Like right now, I have my Sony camera in front of me, and it's autofocusing and face tracking my face. But if the Panasonic GH5 can barely do that, that's really a shame. But it's not a deal. It's not. I wouldn't say it's a complete deal breaker, but it's going to affect a lot of people.
It's not a complete deal breaker. I mean, when I heard about the GH5, I was actually excited for GH5, but I've never held the GH5 with high regards in terms of its autofocus, because I know GH4 didn't have the best autofocus, but when you tap the screen, it will pull focus and then pulls focus just fine. But if you're expecting it to like track your subject or detect a face, lock onto that face really well like the Sony does, then yeah, you're just going to be in for a disappointment. But for, like you said, I mean, you were adapting lenses on your GH4 anyways. I think a large majority of the people who uses the GH4 have been adapting lenses. So moving on to the GH5 is the right transition for them. It's the right upgrade. But for people who are looking to use this camera for YouTube, for content creation, like what we're doing, for YouTube, one-man team and all that good jazz, it's not going to be the best. I mean, the flip screen would definitely help out a lot, but if we want reliable autofocus, we're going to have to stick with the Sonys.
Yeah, I if that continuous autofocus is something that you need, I would love to test the Panasonic GH5. I love doing a continuous autofocus test with sports. So I doubt Panasonic's watching this, but if you'd love to send me a unit, I'd love to test it out
Maybe
and
too.
prove everybody wrong and find the exact correct settings and help you sell more GH5. So if Panasonic, you're listening, please, I'd love to just go ahead and test that autofocus situation out and prove everybody wrong. Because
Yeah.
maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But it seems to be that it is just a problem. And by the way, I think it was either Max that mentioned it, Max Yurev. The manual says that the autofocusing is reduced. The ability for it to autofocus is reduced when shooting in 4K.
Ugh.
And it says it's not an error. It's actually normal for it to underperform when you're recording in 4K. And I think that was it. That was kind of the
I mean,
go.
it's a shame because the face detection, the autofocus still works really well in 4K for the Sony camera. So it's quite a bummer. But at the end of the day,
Jason, a question for you.
it's not a
With
huge.
regards to shooting weddings and video, how are you using continuous autofocus in certain
Oh yeah.
situations?
Oh yeah, of course. I have it on spot focusing. That tends to work the best for me since there's just so many faces going on at weddings. I don't know if registering of faces works in video mode, but for the most part, I keep it on a spot focusing and track the bride with that, and it's working. It's been working fairly well for me. I have no complaints with it.
Oh boy, GH5, folks. I'm still waiting for April 23rd and what Sony's going to drop. And I have a feeling that everyone's going to start rethinking their orders on the GH5. But that's just me.
I mean, at
Um,
the end of the day, filmmakers, anybody who's used to manual focusing, they're gonna love the GH5. The GH5 is delivering very hard, so it's just a shame that the autofocus isn't on par with the rest of the other stuff that they are offering within that camera.
this is a topic. And, before when continuous autofocus was becoming a thing,
Yeah.
I was hardcore manual focusing. And I don't know, for those of you in the chat, like, what's your thoughts on it? Are you still on the whole um, manual focusing, or do you think that continuous autofocus is the way to go nowadays? But man, I was just hardcore manual focusing because that's how I was doing work with the Canon cameras, was manual focusing. But damn, the autofocus has just gotten so good on the Sonys and Canon cameras now that you depend on it for certain scenarios.
Yeah, Philip Bloom also
No.
depends on it on his videos too. So it's becoming a thing where professionals would use the autofocus on their cameras.
Yeah, and also for gimbal work, right? I mean, if you're doing gimbal work, and
Oh yeah,
continuous autofocus can come in handy.
oh yeah.
I think Panasonic will still do well with the GH5, but unfortunately, the autofocus issue is going to plague them. In my opinion, the GH5 does an excellent job of providing a multitude of video features for their users in terms of recording options. But one aspect they neglected was the continuous autofocus / face tracking. I think Panasonic really pigeonholed themselves into this video / DSLR camera. And the negative publicity, although not deserved, in my honest opinion, is going to taint the image of this camera, which it already has. You've seen the Max Yurev and PhotoJoseph debacle that happened, and they both even met up and they worked together to try and find some good solutions, which is actually a really nice thing that they tried to do. But at the end of it, it didn't seem like they came to a conclusive answer for every single user. The very technical and mechanical user who sought out this camera in the first place are going to love it. The folks who manually pull focus and adapt glass, like I did with the GH4, will love it. However, the bandwagon crowd that heard about the camera because every YouTuber said it was awesome, like me, and they wanted to use it for YouTube, for example, are going to be sadly selling their units or canceling orders when they realize it's terrible for vlogging and it can't easily track their face like a sit down that we're doing right now. The video market and user is changing. They want something that simply works. Panasonic might not have built the camera with the intention for this particular group of people, but with all the effort of adding high-level video bit rates and options, they neglected the continuous autofocus in video. You might say that this camera isn't designed for all YouTubers or vloggers, but more for the cinema crowd. Unfortunately, I think it caught the attention of many of these individuals. Furthermore, influencers, tech reviewers, and bloggers have started to use it. And the complaint they've all made is autofocus is terrible. Add to that, not every person out there is very technical with their camera. I'm sorry, you live in a bubble where, for example, we think image quality has to be amazing or bulletproof or perfect, but the majority of people could give a crap or care less about any of that. You know, I've posted pictures online before and they quickly get reposted with a filter on them. Nobody really cares in today's social media for all those little different aspects of it. They just want a camera that works. They don't want to have to fiddle with all these settings that are complicated for them. You know, I know how to use my cameras in manual mode and understand most of their settings. I'm honestly the few out there just like you that are watching this video right now, but you have to realize there is a large market of people, YouTubers and such, that literally leave their camera on auto. Hope you realize that. This was a market that Panasonic could have captured, in my opinion. You know, I want them to succeed. There's nothing about this camera that I don't think it'll do a really great job. But now the GH5 will be restricted to a particular market group of cinematographers that are very skilled in using and taking advantage of the potential this camera has, which it has many. And that's my 2 cents on the topic. Let me know what you think by answering the poll on the top right over here, whether or not you'll still want to buy this camera with continuous autofocus issues. And let me know in the comment section below your general thoughts about this issue or whether you don't care about it. Well, folks, that's all I have for you in this video. You know what to do. If you like the video, give it a like. And if you want to catch more content from me, go ahead and click somewhere over here. And if you want to know about the new uploads that I do, don't forget to activate the little bell and click somewhere here to subscribe to my channel. Oh, and if you really want to know the Sony gear that I'm using or the stuff I use to film my videos, I've posted links to my kit in the description below. And with that said, I'm your host, That One Camera Guy, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye. I'm gonna get totally roasted for this video.